worldwide business case competition. I'll be your timekeeper for today's match. The team presenting today is from Carleton University. At this time, I would ask you to turn off your mobile devices as a courtesy to the presenters. Do not leave until both presentation and question and answering session are finished. Please note that the recording of this session is strictly prohibited except for the organizers or the representatives of the presenting team. The presentation will be 20 minutes long. I'll be indicating the time left with these signs: 10, 5, 3, and 1 minute. After the presentation, judges will have 10 minutes to question the team. I will also indicate the time left with 5, 3, and 1 minute mark. So, judges, introduce themselves. And we can start the presentation. Thank you.
Welcome, team. I'm Carleton, CEO of this company.
Finance.
And my name is Rita Blue. I'm in charge for marketing. My name is Susanna Pajala. I'm R&D.
And I'm Christopher Clark from Quality Assurance.
You may start.
Good afternoon, executives. Most cross-border acquisitions fail because they lack the understanding of national, business, and organizational cultures. Ideally, of course, the combined value of the company should be more than the sum of both. But for that, it is imperative to understand where most synergies within the value chain can be realized. We're in Novo Consulting. My name is Carlos, and these are my colleagues Sonia, Jacqueline, and Chongo. You're at a point where you need to redefine your strategic direction in order to really capitalize on the acquisition synergies from PM. However, we see three key barriers: market differences in terms of standards, aggressive competition all across the globe, and differences in corporate culture. So beginning with our analysis, and we'll do a top-down approach, beginning with our macro or industry, how you're positioned in this environment and how your company is reacting to that. So beginning with our macroeconomic analysis, we believe that growth in advanced markets are actually driving economic output, global economic output, as they are importing more and more for emerging markets. So this drop in oil prices and decreasing unemployment is really driving demand in the construction segment. Environmental and engineering standards differ all across the globe, and this really allows you, or forces you rather, to adapt to these changes. The cost of production in emerging markets might be rising as they develop more and more. And finally, cooperation between Germany and China for Industry 4.0 is really driving demand as well for Internet of Things and investments on technology as a complementary source for increasing the advantage of the products and offerings that you have for the market.
So now that we've gotten into the macro analysis, it's time to get into the actual industry. With the key thing to note being that industry characteristics are highly connected to a country's environment, requiring differences in market strategy depending on where you're operating. In order to reach this overall conclusion, we analyzed the quarters by forces and identified that the intensity of rivalry and barriers to entry are the two biggest forces which are impacting your industry. With regard to differences in rivalry, depending on whether you're operating in advanced or emerging economies, there are differences in the market situation. So when you're in advanced economies, you're dealing with a much more saturated market where there's less room for actual growth. Whereas when you're in emerging economies, such as China, there's a lot of room for growth there, but there's also a lot of price competition. Another key difference between the two different types of economies is the fact that some of them have differences in technical and pricing standards. So when you're in emerging industries, there's a lot less of an emphasis on technical standards. Whereas when you're in advanced economies, that's where there's more of an emphasis on technical standards.
Looking within your consumer, it's extremely important to note that Sony must mirror PM's commitment to meeting customer needs, the difference in customer needs, in order to retain market leadership. So we've looked at the consumer and characterized them based on three dimensions. What are their needs, what are their values, and what are their specific characteristics? First of all, they have a need of high quality parts and machinery products. Secondly, they value customized service, product customization, and lastly, new innovative products to help them with their business. And lastly, the characteristics of this consumer include brand loyalty, strong cultural differences in the way they receive their own services and the way their products are tailored. And lastly, this is a B2B consumer, so they are price conscious.
Finally, analyzing your company, and this is considering Sandy after the acquisition of PM,
what we find is that you've started to realize some synergies, making initial progress in terms of joint product development. However, there are large challenges in terms of alignment of cultural and values. So this acquisition was driven not just for product development. It was driven because you found potential for synergies in terms of increasing your market reach, in terms of selling complementary products, and in terms of having R&D and complementary technologies. However, until now, the impact has been very limited to just development of one product. This has been challenged because of your lack of previous experience with working with international cultures and your issue creating truly one unified business culture. However, when we analyze both of your company cultures, what we find is that regardless of the fact that you have very significant differences in terms of business culture, there is a common ground that you can build upon. So Sandy is working with your Chinese business culture. You are very fast moving, you hate slowness, and you're very proud of the impact that you have on your national industry. When we compare this to PM, you have an approach that is focused on a more premium product, customizing this to the customer's needs, and a more sophisticated technology. However, you do have a very strong commonality in terms of your foundation that prioritizes quality and excellence. So this is something that you can build upon to make sure that the two companies are connecting based on what they have in common and not just in noticing your differences. So putting this all together, we've outlined 3 main strategic priorities that can help you identify what the best course of action is for your future. These are cultural integration, strategic alignment between the two companies, making sure you're working for a common goal, and finally, potential for innovation, as this has been crucial to the success of both of the companies. So we've outlined 3 main strategic directions. And the way we've thought of these directions is by considering which portions of the value chain truly bring value from integrating them. Because if not, you're only incurring integration costs and not realizing benefits. These directions are joint innovation, flexible integration, and full incorporation. In terms of joint innovation, you would be integrating just your research and development. So what you're doing is building on this success of product development that you've already had and capitalizing on the fact that one of the companies focuses more on quality research and the other one has more experience in terms of efficiency research. In terms of flexible integration, what you're trying to do is integrating all upstream activities while leveraging your different distribution channels, but maintaining your dual brand approach. So what this allows you is to continue to target 2 customers through 2 different brands, but integrating the upstream portion to leverage your efficiencies. Finally, full incorporation would integrate all activities in the value chain, unifying corporate culture under a single brand.
Looking at the joint innovation direction, the key positives here is that there's collaboration between R&D and investment. Second, it leads to a shared value in product development. On the negative side, it does not close the gap between cultural understanding. Second, there's missed opportunities to leverage the distribution channels within your synergy that you created with your acquisition. And third, expected synergies do not fully realize. Within the second direction, you capitalize on different areas of expertise within the synergy. It also allows for continued growth within China. And third, it leads to alignment within the strategic direction of your company. And thirdly, it strengthens your relationship with goals and which is clear for both companies. However, on the negative side, there's high expenses associated with this alternative. As well, there's potential for employee confusion as you integrate both of these strategies.
So last but not least, getting into the full incorporation strategic alternative. The main positives that are associated with this are the fact that you'll have a unified value chain, because all of your processes will be together and you'll have one product. Additionally, you'll be maximizing economies of scale and efficiency of investment because there will be a lot of standardization involved with this. However, on the negative side, there is a lack of regional adaptation because of the fact that it's such a standardized product. Additionally, there's a loss of brand reputation. You may get so tied up in the joint brand that you'll lose what made each brand special. And last but not least is internal employee pushback. A lot of the time, employees get very attached to the brand that they have, and trying to get used to a new joint brand may be difficult for them. So, taking each of these things into consideration, we ranked each strategic alternative based on the different decision criteria which were outlined before, and we found that flexible integration is the direction that your company should undertake, for 2 main reasons. Being that 1, it's the best in terms of cultural integration, and 2, it's the best in terms of the potential for innovation. On the one hand, you will be aligning your value chain, which will be a good thing for your company, but you won't be losing the things which make both of your brands special. And you'll be allowing for the ability to tailor your brand to each specific region that you'll be operating in. And at the same time, you'll be encouraging innovation amongst your employees. For each of these reasons, we recommend that you go with flexible integration.
So what does flexible integration entail? You're going to have to focus on aligning your R&D, production, and distribution, basically your upstream, whereas your downstream is going to be very flexible depending on what your capabilities are. You understand that in terms of the R&D, you want to focus as a company on developing and investing capital on technological capabilities that allow you to tap onto what Industry 4.0 means globally. Additionally, collaborating on investments and setting mutual goals will really align your overall company values, not only PM, but SANI. And in terms of production, what we're seeing is you have manufacturing capabilities all across the globe. However, we do see that customization and standardization really have different alignment with the needs of the customer. So in terms of Germany, a more advanced economy where you want your parts to be a lot more specialized, you will move the entire manufacturing of PM to the manufacturing facilities that PM has. Whereas in China, you will be focusing on developing the standardized machinery for all across the globe. In terms of distribution, you've stated that you have very well established relationships in terms of your distribution channels, and what you want to create and tap on is the increased accessibility and knowledge, not only of the distribution channels, but all across the globe in terms of how to manage those partnerships and how to fully market those products. And that's what reaches to the downstream of your value chain. And this is where the flexibility arises. PM has as a core this specialized products that you can put in advanced economies and economies that have the income capability to buy those products. And that is why we do believe that you should continue with dual branding, where PM manages to market its product and SANI manages to market as well its other product. In terms of service, we also believe that should be very targeted specifically to the client, but this is going to be managed by both of your companies. Where SANI is going to keep focusing on what it does, and PM is going to keep focusing on what it does as well in terms of service. However, there's going to be some regional adaptation because of this alignment of overall goals arising from your R&D, production, and distribution alignment.
So how does this represent a strategic move for your company? You've already acquired PM because you identified the potential for synergies having the two companies together. However, what we find is that going through the trouble of integrating your whole value chain is not going to bring you all the benefits that you're forecasting. While focusing on integrating the upstream portion and the portions that can truly work best together, you're respecting the value of each of the companies and maximizing the strengths that they provide when working together. So you can still retain this dual brand as you're serving two very different customers that need different approaches and different products. This can align very well with your strategic priorities. First, you're able to integrate the two cultures. You will be working as a company and as a one company together, and it's important to have a clear strategic direction that you both share. However, you can still target your downstream portion to serve what the customer is looking for. This resonates as well with your strategic alignment as you're leveraging your mutual strengths. So for example, if you have cheaper manufacturing in China, there's no reason why you should compromise this, but you can continue to leverage for a standardized product. And finally, there is potential for innovation as you are pulling together your R&D capabilities and increasing what you can do together, maximizing your company flexibility and remaining able to adapt.
So, getting into the overall implementation, this will involve activities from the operations, marketing, and human resource departments. Within the operations department, the focus will really be on integrating those production, the research and development, and the distribution parts of your value chain so that they'll be able to be in streamline with each other. Additionally, with regard to the marketing department, the focus there will really be on developing an initiative that will be targeted towards your end customers through dual customer branding. And last but not least is the Human Resources Department, which will focus heavily on making sure that your employees are aligned with each other so that you'll be able to best offer products to your consumers. Now, since we've gotten into the fact that so what we've realized about your company is the fact that right now, your employees aren't really aligned with each other due to the differences in corporate and culture within your company. So, in order to fix this, and in order for you to be successful in the long term, what you need to do is make sure that you can take these two differences in culture, which Sonia outlined before, and turn them into one. So where both of your groups of employees can really benefit from each other. So this involves 3 different initiatives, being the recognize, respect, and reinforce initiatives. And what these will do is seek to take your employees from being change resistors and turning them into change promoters. So how this will work. Within the recognized stage, what you'll really be focused focusing on is developing a plan, an HR initiative, which will seek to educate both of your groups of employees about the different cultures within your organization. And this will involve the preparation of case training, simulation, and rotational programs. And each of these will be developed by taking surveys of both of your different groups of employees in terms of what the different activities they do and part of their departments are. And by doing this, you'll be able to create training materials which both groups of your employees will be able to undertake and truly understand, so that at the end, there will be two different cultures which will be able to merge into one where both respect each other. So, in the next aspect of it, that is the respect stage. So within respect, that's where you seek to get information from your employees in terms of the effectiveness of the program to see if it's really working and if it's really creating that joint corporation culture. And as a result, if there are any issues, you'll be able to alter that program so that at the end, your company will be better aligned. And last but not least is the reinforcement stage. And what this will be done for is to make sure that your employees are actually motivated to take part in these programs and to actually benefit from them. And what you'll be doing is you'll be implementing a change champion. And this change champion will reward 10 employees on a continuous basis, depending on which region that they're in, based on which ones are the most open to innovation and to actually embracing that cultural change. And in the event that an employee is actually selected as one of the winners, what they'll be able to do is maybe go online on your company website and determine which type of prize which they'd like to have. So for example, if I'm an employee who really likes working out, maybe I could select to get a gift card to a local gym. And that way I'm motivated to actually learn the cultures of the different employees within the organization.
So now it's important to understand how we are going to integrate the downstream activities through marketing initiatives. So this, as we mentioned earlier, will be done through a dual brand focus. So that will be made in China and made in Germany. And the key messages here in the Chinese market will be fast response, affordability, and standardization of product. And because they're a collectivistic culture, it's important to understand that the selling proposition must be in person. You must understand that trust must be established, so when approaching these clients, you do so in person, within in-person meetings. Looking at the second market, Germany, there must be an emphasis on product quality, a prioritization on customization, high-quality customer service, and last, product innovation. They want to know what's coming up, what's the next piece of technology they can implement. So the platforms that you'll do this is trade magazines such as International Construction. You'll have a reach to your consumer there. And second, again, like I was saying, a personal selling, utilizing a sales video of what your machinery can do with your unique selling proposition, and of course a virtual reality where your clients can put on goggles and see your product in action.
So moving towards the financial feasibility of this strategic direction. First of all, revenues will grow at a global economy. As we said before, really the construction industry works as a thermometer of where the global economy is going, as construction really shows housing startups as well as just overall infrastructure investment. However, we do believe that as you realize more and more of synergies, you will actually have and enjoy a higher revenue growth across the next 5 years. So margin compression actually will occur, and it's forecasted to occur in the short term, specifically because of operational and cultural integration costs. We're talking about a huge HR implementation strategy that will drive this company culture to not become two, but become one. And finally, after major costs are incurred, we do see margin expansion, and this specifically, as we mentioned, because of synergy realization. Going towards the cost drivers, I want to highlight specifically what goes into the integration costs. Integration costs are average of 15% of revenues associated with the growth in revenues because of your competitive advantage of your products. And this will be occurring for the next 3 years, specifically the first 3 years, as we believe that this plan, with full implementation, will be having fruits in the next 3 years. And finally, but training and development and rotational programs will be forecasted over the last 2 years, so that you can ensure that the corporate culture aligns well all across your global exposure.
We've identified 3 main risks that must be mitigated to ensure the success of this alternative. The first one of them being the difficulty aligning upstream activities, which is why you will be having quarterly meetings that ensure that this is in progress. The second one is a potential blurred brand perception among customers. Since you are maintaining your dual brand approach, it might be difficult for them to determine what you're truly offering. This is why it's important to have clear communication of each brand image and how each of them is targeting a different customer, whether they're seeking a premium product or a more standardized and affordable product. Finally, complications with cultural integration are likely. However, this can be mitigated with this interactive training program that truly lets you put yourself in the shoes of someone else and make sure you connect with what you have in common rather than just the differences that are between the two company cultures.
So finally, what does success look like? We're seeing again 30% employee satisfaction, and this really aligns with this cultural barrier that we placed at the beginning. Through the implementation of this alternative and a strategic direction, you will be actually able to join and merge both cultures, capitalize on the strengths that both cultures have to offer to your company in different regions, and overall see an employee satisfaction rise. Additional to that, 30% profit margin, operating margin, in terms of after synergies are realized. And what this really means is, in the short term, as you're incurring more and more cost regarding integration, your operating margins will actually drop. However, as synergies occur and your revenue starts growing as well, your operating margins will expand. And finally, 25 employees rewarded for change and innovation mindset. And that's what you really need. You need a global mindset at this point to manage global operations, not only in terms of the downstream of your value chain, but specifically on the upstream of your value chain where your synergies can be fully realized. Thank you so much, and we welcome any questions.
The presentation was 19 minutes, 29 seconds. Judges, you have now 10 minutes to ask questions.
Thank you. So, please, to my team.
I would like to see what is your view on you had put a lot of stress on integrating the cultures, the corporate cultures, HR. In my view, we are quite far with that. It seems that our German partners are quite satisfied with the acquisition at this point. Can you elaborate on why we should still invest so much in this and even use the word launch?
Right. So having a global mindset doesn't necessarily mean of currently operating and having good relationships with your partners. It's really about exploiting those strengths that the differences in culture can bring to your company. As of this point in time, you don't have a specific HR initiative that really tries to capitalize on those strengths. So what we want to do is not only, it's basically to see your company as one, rather than through two different segments of your company. But in order to see your company as one, you do need to fully have an employee mindset that aligns with that. So what that means is your HR initiative and the initiative that my colleague explained tries to align your company core values with what what the Germany company can provide. And overall, we do believe that although right now your relationships are well, you don't have a long-term sustainable plan to manage these cultural differences.
Okay, one question. We have now been going through this process for a couple of years. Yeah. So according to numbers given to you, so how do you see our financial position at the moment? Are we going up or down, or what about our profitability and things like that? How do you see us?
Perfect. So as we believe as we said before, your revenue growth will actually be very close to what global growth is. And as synergies start to become more material, you will actually exhibit higher revenue growth in the next 5 years. And I want to point out specifically that you are currently operating at a 40% gross margins. Through the implementation of this alternative, you will see gross margins going down to 7%. However, as these synergies become more material, your gross margins will start to expand as well. This only covers the next 5 years. However, we do believe that on average, in the next 10 years, you should be getting a 30% gross margins. And this is with regards to full incorporation of both companies. So aligning your downstream of the upstream of your value chain will cause this margin compression in this short term. However, in the long term, when you have all of these capabilities aligned, your gross margins will be able to expand again and return close to historical averages.
Did you have an idea for what Industry 4.0 would bring for us?
Absolutely. So what we're looking at is mainly the Internet of Things. The ability of have machinery and products that communicate with each other, reducing the need for labor intensity and having humans actually involved in the process. So one of the things we envision relates to maintenance. When you're working with machinery, and this can be related to when you manage a fleet of trucks, something key is knowing when you have to maintain your equipment to be able to reduce this cost. And this tends to be a very significant portion of managing any business related to equipment. So in terms of Internet of Things, if you are able to have a component in terms of your machinery that tracks how many hours they're operating and tracks the depreciation of each of the components, you can actually alert the owner of when a repair is going to be needed in advance. So this has a huge impact on minimizing equipment downtime, which is one of the key metrics that we look to reduce in any manufacturing industry. So by knowing when you're going to need that maintenance in advance, you can schedule it more efficiently and minimizing time where your equipment is not being able to use, which means having workers there that are not being able to use the equipment and overall decreases your productivity. So by having this, you can minimize all of those negative impacts.
What is the role of research and development activities for our company in the future? How you see it?
Perfect.
How important is it?
Yeah, no, it's super important. So one of our key criteria is potential for innovation. As we said, R&D is probably the first one in your entire value chain that needs to be aligned. Why? You have significant capital deployed. 5 to 7% of your capital is deployed in R&D, and this is only in SANI. In terms of PM, we want to align the capital that is invested, both from PM and SANI, to our overall strategic objective. And what this means, as we said, is tapping on Industry 4.0. R&D is very important. It's probably the most important part of alignment in terms of your value chain. And again, we forecasted that into the 5 to 7% range, and we decided to keep that constant across your margins. So we said 40% gross margins across the next 5 years. And so we don't see significant improvements in R&D. What we do see is overall with alignment that will overcome the differences in investment that come from both of your companies investing in R&D. So R&D will be continuing across the next 5 years and more, given that through alignment we do believe that there is more and more potential for innovation.
Okay, one question. What kind of benefits do we as a company get from this political blessing Jinping and Mrs. Merkel did by blessing this cooperation between these countries and technologies?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what are the benefits we as a company are getting from that political blessing, which we now have in this data when Mr. Jinping, the president of China, and Mrs. Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, they kind of did some kind of agreement or political theater or whatever. Are we getting any benefits from that kind of activities in a political?
Absolutely. So many of the barriers to trade are actually coming from policies implemented by governments. So when you have an initiative like this that shows that both of the governments are interested in increasing trade between the countries and increasing the flow of goods between them, this is something that absolutely benefits your company through reduction of trade barriers. So for example, elimination of tariffs and the kind of initiatives that we've seen in trade partnership agreements is something that will be fostered between the two countries. This is crucial for you because you have both manufacturing capabilities in two of the countries, and having the ability to move goods freely between them and lowering the imports and taxes that you're having to pay on them just to incur this transfer between the two countries can actually minimize the cost when you are transferring your production between them.
You were drawing a straight line between the made in China and collectivistic sales approach. How does made in China define the sales approach?
So that's looking at the Chinese market. So looking at the way we segmented it is products made in China and products made in Germany. So looking at the products made in China, the target here is that Chinese market. So when looking at the market dynamics of China, we evaluated things based on Hofstede's cultural dimensions. And some of the things that we thought were extremely important was how collectivistic they were. So when looking at an appropriate sales strategy, we allocated personal selling to be the most appropriate.
Just a moment. But I understood that also made in China products were going to be sold elsewhere as well. That's why I was wondering about the straight line.
Yeah, that's correct. So essentially what the difference here is that the made in China products will have an emphasis on that standardization and the affordability and the fast response time. It still can be targeted towards those other markets, and that's where we get into the regional differences. And looking at the downstream activities remaining the same, and that they will be regionally adapted, the marketing and sales will be regionally adapted in order to target those markets with messages from made in China and from made in Germany.
Okay, about the change management aspect, generally speaking, our company is happy at the moment. If we're changing to something a little bit to this model, there's going to be some resistance. And I notice you have some kind of a plan for that, but could you open that up further?
Yeah. So
Worst case scenario is if we have, sorry to interrupt you, but worst case scenario is that if there's massive change resistance because of this integration.
yeah, so definitely the number one thing that you need to do as a company is really communicate the message to each and every single one of your employees. Because the biggest way that change resistance occurs is when employees aren't really sure what's going on. There are a bunch of changes that are going on all around the organization, and they're not really sure where to look to. So the best place to look is at the past, which is what they're used to. So what really needs to happen is for that top management to clearly communicate that right now we're not okay with where our organization is at, but we envision an amazing state for the future. And by doing that, the first thing that you'll actually have to do is to implement a change management and a change champion. And by doing that, that will motivate your employees to actually feel and actually believe that this will be a good implementation for your company to undertake. And additionally, what you'll also be doing is implementing that employee reward program, which will give your employees that motivation to actually go and learn about the other cultures within your organization.
Have we succeeded somewhere in that integration process or not?
Yes, so the integration process should be successful integration process occurs in the next 2 to 3 years. So in 2 to 3 years is when synergies begin to realize. And these synergies is not only in the alignment of your value chain, as well as in the alignment of this overall cultural integration.
Have we already succeeded?
Time.
If I could just get everyone to stay seated while the judging panel goes off to their deliberation room. They still have 10 minutes of deliberation, so let's make that the priority.